Now let's discuss stateful session beans. We already seen this in introduction that there is one instance created per client. So all the client requests from client A will be directed to the same bean. So once this instance gets injected into this client, we always hit upon the same instance of the bean. Now let's create one stateful session bean. So session bean, and this time we'll create a stateful session bean. Stateful bean. Okay, and we'll select stateful over here, and let's create a remote or a local bean right now. So local bean can be accessed only by clients within the application server instance. Remote beans are accessed by clients which are outside the application server. Finish. So just like stateless bean, we have an interface and the bean instance. Now, unlike stateless beans, in stateful beans, we can actually store the state because there is a single instance per client. So let's write few methods. So first of all, let me write a method over here. Void set name or set animal type, and let's create this method. Another method I'll create is void set animal total number. Okay, and we'll take an int. This is the total number of animals, total number. Now let's create another method whose purpose I'll tell you later on. Void finish, and let's save this and let's go to the implementation of the bean and let's implement all those methods. Okay, and let's create some fields. We can store conversational state, right? Because it's a stateful bean. So animal type string, and we'll store an int animal total number. Okay, and then in this method we will save the type. Okay, and over here we will assign the total number. Okay, and then we will save this class as of now. Now let's code this method. So animal A is equal to new animal. Okay, and then A dot set type is equal to animal type. Okay, and A dot set total number is equal to animal total number. So basically all the accumulated values we are finally assigning it to a new animal, and then as usual we'll persist. So before persisting, let's inject an entity manager, right? So an manager em, and let's give annotation of persistence context. Persistence context unit name is equal to, the unit name is going to be what has been mentioned in your persistence.xml file. So the mentioned name is so the unit name is this. So close this file and type it over here. Okay, and then entity manager dot persist A. Okay, let's save and run this example. So before we run this example, let me show you the changes I made to my tester. So over here, instead of stateless bean, I'm now injecting the interface of our stateful bean. Remember, we inject the interface and not the implementation. And over here, I call the set animal type method, set animal total number, and then I call the finish method. So what this example will prove that intermediate state is maintained by the bean. So let me run this example. So over here, right click, select run, The application has been deployed. So let's check the database. So over here in our connection, in our database, go to the connection, go to ZooDB. Let's open the table, view data, and here's our new animal with the total number of 3. So while discussing stateful beans, I had mentioned that it's the client's responsibility to remove the bean. The bean remains dangling in the server till the server decides to remove it if it remains in the server for too long. So it's basically the client's responsibility to clean up after using the bean. So let's code that method for cleaning up the bean. So for that, you just have to annotate one of the method with remove. So remove. So by labeling the finish method with remove annotation, what you're saying is when the finish method finishes or when the finish method ends, the bean is removed from the server. Now instead of annotating the finish method with remove annotation, we could have done something like this. So over here, first of all, let me create a new method. The name is maybe end the bean, and let's save this. Let's implement that method. Over here, select implement all abstract methods, and over here let's remove this off first, and we'll just put or cut this remove from here and put it over here. Now from the client we have to call that method. The finish is not going to remove the bean, so we call my bean and the bean. So the main thing is calling the method annotated with remove. It doesn't matter whether the method contains logic or not, only the invocation of this method matters. Just to bring one point to your notice, it's really not a good thing to inject a stateful bean in a singleton bean. Later on, for all the beans, we are going to see some ideal clients. That section is going to come later on. Now let's understand the life cycle of a stateful bean. So there are basically 3 states. First is when it doesn't exist, second is when it's method ready, and third is when it's passive. So let's understand them one by one. So initially the bean doesn't exist. After that a new instance gets created, and after that all the injections take place. For example, injecting an entity manager or some other resources. And later on the post construct method runs. After that the bean goes into method ready state. This is a state where your clients can access the bean. Now when the client calls the remove method, the pre-destroy method is called and the bean ceases to exist. So all this is very similar to what we have done for stateless beans. The main difference here is the passive state. Now as you know, stateful beans hold some state in them. So server, sometimes to conserve resources, can passivate those beans and save it to some secondary storage. So before the bean gets passivated, the pre-passivate method is called, and after the bean comes from the passive state to the method ready state, the post activate method gets called. So before in stateless bean, we just used 2 lifecycle methods. We just annotated 2 methods with post construct and pre-destroy. But now we can annotate 4 methods with post construct, pre-destroy, pre-passivate, and post activate. If a client request comes for this bean and the bean is in passivate state, first the post activated method is called, and then the bean comes in this state and the method can be run. Now in the earlier example, we had seen that the client has to call the remove method to remove the bean from the server. But what happens when the client forgets to call the remove method? The instance can keep on dangling in the server. So to avoid such a situation, server usually has some timeout for the beans. So when the timeout period occurs or the time lapses, the bean goes out of existence. So the timeout can occur whether in this state, method ready state, or it can occur in this state, passive state.